Alrighty, Josh Addo-Carr stands down ahead of week one. Addo-Carr has volunteered to stand himself down from a core stadium clash with Seagulls to spare the club bad publicity after allegedly returning a positive result to the roadside drug test on Friday. Addo-Carr maintains his innocence, and his lawyer has pointed to irregularities during testing process, with the reports indicating police were unable to follow usual roadside drug testing procedures because they were called to a nearby home invasion. The charges against Addo-Carr were thrust into public consciousness on Monday when Gus Gould tweeted denying that the initial roadside test had been positive. That claim was contradicted by police statement later. A discrepancy Gould put down to Addo-Carr's relaying of the information to the club. I guess the question, first of all, is what are your thoughts on the whole situation, Smithy? And then we'll talk about how it's been handled.
Well, the whole situation's all a little bit strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
The news is that Josh and other injured players, plus the coaching staff of the Bulldogs, they were at the Roosters match at Addo-Carr. That's correct, isn't it? Because they were staying across the road. Then Josh has decided to leave at half time to go get a phone charger for some reason. That's the story that we're being told, and in that time, that's when he's been pulled over and the test has occurred. I don't know. It just seems like there's something missing somewhere in the story that we've been told. And I think, watching Gus Gould and listening to him talk, I feel as though he believes the same, that there's something missing somewhere. The pieces just aren't going together completely at the moment. So it's a strange one. And, I look at the fact that Josh has stood himself down. I feel as though that there's more to this story than what we've already heard, or there's more to come, I should say. What's really unfortunate is that it's happened on the eve of the Bulldogs' first finals campaign in a long, long time. Like the last time they played finals was 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this has been a very, very successful year for the Bulldogs, for the football club, for the players, for the team, but most importantly for the fans and the members. And unfortunately now there's just this slight shadow hanging over this first week of finals for them.
Mate, I tell you what makes it so confusing for me is that I agree there's definitely something is missing here. Something is not adding up. But at the same time, like the Fox is very, very being strong.
He's adamant.
Yeah,
adamant.
He is absolutely that it did not happen. And you would think a guy as experienced as the Fox, with such a long career and one of the most loved players in rugby league, he would know better than anyone. You're better to just cop to it than
That's
not.
Correct.
And so it's not like we're dealing with a rookie that's going, you know what, I'm just gonna say I didn't do it and hopefully
I'm just going to lie my way through it. Yeah.
No, he knows better than anyone. Like if you just cop to it, there's ways, like certain things that, for example, you've got in contracts with the RLPA, like you get a certain amount of strikes as well. Like, you know what I mean? So there are protections around this situation happening. Not to suggest that he shouldn't be punished, but what I'm saying is that you'd assume that the punishment will be substantially less if he did do it and he just fesses up to it. And so that's what makes it so confusing, because you have to believe Fox at his word, because it's innocent until, the good old...
Proven guilty?
Yeah, so very, very strange situation. I agree with you, mate. The thing that sucks is that, they've gotten to the finals, and the Fox has been a big part of this. He was one of their first signings that built into this.
Yep.
And it just sucks that, this has happened this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know he's had a couple of injuries this year, but the form that he's shown on their wing, he's so vital to their football side. And the result this weekend, they don't get a second chance. They're playing do or die football now. So him not being there and now having to put a less experienced player in that position that he would have filled, it makes the task even harder for the Bulldogs. So I hope they go out there and play well. And look, if they don't get the win, I really hope everyone doesn't just point the finger at Josh Addo-Carr, but now that's the situation that he's been put in. Yeah. The difficult thing is, right? So we're waiting on this secondary test or third test, whatever it is, the second sample. Okay, and that could where it's been reported and we're hearing that it could take a few weeks to happen. What happens if they lose this week, right? I'm sure he's going to cop a bit of heat,
Yeah.
Josh, for not being there. But then in 2 weeks' time, right, it comes out and says negative. Then what? What do people then say? Oh, sorry, Fox.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I mean, that's why these anonymous tips are just. It's just. I wish there was some protections against it because in reality, until we shouldn't know anything about this until we know the results.
That's right.
And unfortunately, here, if it comes back negative, his name is being damaged because this has been leaked to the media. So I agree with you, mate. It's going to be very strange if it comes back negative and he cops all this heat if they do lose on the weekend. Broncos slumped to a 50-12 loss to the Storm in their final game in a bit of a, well, not just a bit of a, shocking end to the season, heaping more pressure on Kevin Walters. Focus now turns to their retention with a host of players available to negotiate with other clubs come November 1. Reece Walsh due to come off contract but is locked in talks with the club to avoid letting him hit the open market. The future of Adam Reynolds is also under a cloud after an injury-affected season and criticism from Broncos, from Gordon Tallis in the media. It says Brisbane Broncos old boys here, but mainly just Gordon Tallis. Can you see them signings before the extension? Smithy?
Yes.
Broncos. Give me your thoughts, mate.
Oh well, it's a poor season by their standards, isn't it? Coming off what was very close to a premiership last year. Now I know they lost a couple of players, and fairly important players too. So, but mate, they still had a list to do better than what they did. Seriously, like they really should have been playing for finals. They should be playing this week.
Absolutely.
Injuries or no injuries, like I'd like to think that we can move past that because there's teams that have finished in the top 4 that have had a significant amount of injuries throughout this season. Storm, Penrith, like the Sharks as well. Like they've had a lot of injuries throughout the entire season. How many games has Nico Hines played?
Oh, mate.
Like half the
many.
year?
Yeah, not many.
Half the year?
Yeah.
So, like they get a young fella up, Dan Atkinson. He comes in and absolutely kills it. Like he won 10 of 12? I think he's had 12 appearances.
Yeah.
He's won 10 of them. So you can say, oh, look, Adam Reynolds wasn't there and Payne Haas was injured and this and that. They had a good enough squad to be a part of finals. There's a bit more going on than just injuries and the challenges that they face when missing some of their key players. I don't know. I'm going to go back to what I spoke about, last week was that it's one of two things, right? See, they either struggle with expectation this year. Around, a lot of people thought that they were premiership favourites coming off last season, and how close they got, and then feeling as though, look, they'll then go to the next level, find another gear, and go again this year. But they didn't. So they either struggled with the expectation of everyone's belief that they were going to win the competition this year, or they just felt that it was going to happen again without putting in the same amount of work as what they did last year.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. Now, at some stage, whether it be a third of the way through the season, at the halfway mark, whenever it was, someone needs to pretty much just say, hey, hang on, boys, what's happening here? Whether it be player, coaching staff, I don't care. Someone needs to pull the whole group up and say, what we're doing right now is not working.
Yeah.
Okay? Something needs to change. What needs to change? Our training? Is it our game plan? What is it? Because clearly something's not working. Is it our attitude towards our preparation? What is it? Is it our mindset game day? Like, find something. Don't just let the season continue along and just keep finding these poor results because they'd suffer a loss and then you'd want to hear, we're trying to find out what's going on and, Kev really wouldn't give us much. You wouldn't hear much from the playing group. Nothing except for training's, our preparation's been great. Everyone's on board. We can't seem to get it going game day.
Yeah, it's this is their midway through the season they lose to the Titans 36-34, Sharkies 22-12, and it was a dominant performance second half by the Sharkies. They then lose to the Rabbitohs, who had a terrible season themselves. They then lose to the Warriors, who have a terrible season themselves. Lose to the Panthers, lose to the Dragons, lose. Then they beat the Knights. They get absolutely smashed by the Bulldogs, 41-16.
Yep.
They get absolutely smashed by the Titans, 46-18. They have this bizarre win against the Cowboys, but really good win against the Cowboys. They just scrape by the Eels in the second half performance, and they get absolutely smashed 40-6 and 50-12. So in their last 4 games, they lost 46-18 to the Titans. Then they lost 40-6 by the Dolphins and 50-12 by the Storm.
Yep.
You can't tell me that that's just injuries. It's one thing.
No.
Let's say we went through half the back end of the year, and it was we lost by 2 points and 4 points and 6 points. You go, okay, look, maybe things just went. We're getting 40 put on us and 50 put on us. So yeah, I just think that the attitude towards defence needs to improve drastically, and I think that I understand the outwardly facing positivity.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it's conducive to the playing roster that especially is young to almost be oh, no, it's all good, we'll turn it around. I think you need to be a little bit harsher than that, even as, put them not on notice individually, but as a team publicly, the way the best coaches do, in my opinion. Now, onto the Raiders. Won 3 straight to end the season, including wins over both Panthers and Roosters before. Matter of fact, Raiders have one of the best records against top 8 sides out of the whole competition. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, it's insane. Stewart has overseen a rebuild of the squad, focused on youth. So he's come out pretty much before the season started. And this is a key for me. I get frustrated when coaches come out mid-year and say, oh, we're in the middle of a rebuild. It's hang on a sec, you weren't saying that at the start of the year. Whereas Ricky Stewart, he said that from the get-go. It's going to be tough. We're going to blood some young fellas, but we're rebuilding. What did you think of the Raiders season, mate?
Yeah, a little bit up and down, but they were very impressive at the end.
Yeah,
very impressive at the end. When there was a chance for them to be a part of the finals, and look, that up until the last match, Newcastle and Dolphins, they were in the top 8. So that would have been an agonising Sunday afternoon for the players and the coaches and all of their fans waiting to see what was actually going to unfold, and they would have had their fingers crossed. That game was going to result in a draw, but it didn't. So they just missed out. But that the fight that they showed at the end, right? That's what I would have expected to see from the Broncos.
Yeah.
And I know we just spoke about the Bronx, so we don't want to go back to them, but they were in a position in the last 2 rounds to be a part of finals. They just had to get up for that Dolphins game, and they were a big chance. But anyway, they didn't. But look, I think they can hold their heads high. I think they would have expected to be a part of finals, and they just missed out. But I think the way that they finished and the way that they performed against sides sitting above them was pretty impressive for me.
I think the Raiders, their ability, when you actually look at the roster that they had, the injuries to key positions, a guy like Fogarty, when you're already very thin in the spine, and then you lose Fogarty for 12 weeks.
Yep.
At one stage, they had Strange and Weeks in the halves, and there's an argument to be made. Both players aren't necessarily halves, but also Strange is bloody 18 years old. KO Weeks might be 21, 22 years old, and yet they found a way to make it work. No one had heard of Cook from reserve grade earlier in the year, and obviously he came in, he did a job. Mate, I think they deserve massive raps because, I think a lot of other teams in their position with the roster that they've got and the situation the club's in a almost like a rebuild phase, they're finishing bottom 4, and they're not even coming close to challenging top tier sides.
Yeah, that's you're right, mate. And they finished on the same wins as Newcastle, and Newcastle are playing this week, so there was only a little bit in it. The one area I think Ricky will want to work on extremely hard in this pre-season will be their defence. They conceded 600 points this year.
Yeah.
If they improved that, or if that was a little bit better this year, I got no doubt they would have played finals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a couple of games this year where they just the defence was just non-existent at times, particularly on their goal line where, and I think they were the games where Ricky come out and absolutely just give them a hiding in the press.
Yeah.
Saying it was embarrassing, little boys' performance, those type of things. So I think next year their main focus will be to shore up their defence and make sure that when they get out next year, that everyone's on the same page as far as what needs to happen with their structures and more so around their ability to turn opposition teams away off their own goal line.
Regular season over. Who's the pick for Dally M, mate?
Well, there's only two names, isn't there?
Should be only one. Should be only one.
Well, it's Hughes and Teddy, mate. I got to say Hughes has to be. Has to be Hughes.
I've said it a couple of times now over the last few weeks, and I'll say it again. If Hughes doesn't win, in my opinion, we need a serious look at the way the Dally M system is set up.
Blow it up, you reckon?
Oh, look, something. Because
are you jumping on the lines of Wayne Bennett with the bunker? So Wayne wants the bunker just gone.
Blow everything up.
Just blow the whole thing up.
Blow everything up. We start again next year. Refresh start.
But you know what, mate? I'm with you. I'm actually, mate, if he doesn't win, like there's something wrong.
How could
with,
he not?
With the whole voting system.
Yeah.
Like there's been, don't get me wrong, Teddy has been very, very good this year. And I think he only had to play the one Origin game. Okay? Him not having to play an entire series, I think, has gone on to help him play much more consistent club footy. Okay? He's been able to sustain that high level for the entire season. But I just don't think he has been as brilliant or as influential as Jerome Hughes has been for the Melbourne Storm. I just don't think he has.
Oh, mate, I agree. And like you look at the Melbourne Storm, and there've been some blokes who had some good years. You've got guys like Katoa's been good, guys like Wishart that have really stood out. But like Hughes has been the main man every game to win that minor premierships with 3 rounds to go. Whereas you could look at the Roosters, and they obviously finished in the top 4, but obviously not first. You've had guys like Sam Walker that have had great years, Angus Crichton have had great years. So I agree with you, mate. Like this absolutely is not a reflection on Teddy.
No, we're not saying Teddy's had a poor season.
No, not at all. And matter of fact, he's proven why he's such a champion.
Yeah.
But I just think that the system needs a rethink, because last year I could understand to a degree. I thought SJ probably should have won it. However, the 10-game run of KP was so incredible, I get it.
Yeah.
But this is one of the first years in a while, and I'm sure that our listeners will text in and go, Kempy, what about this year? And what about this year? And I get it. But I can't remember a year where it has been so clear of the dominant player. Like, I can't remember a year where we've just been like, absolutely. Obviously, you could point to Tommy Turbo 2021, but even Tommy Turbo 2021, he didn't win a minor premiership for his team. Like, no. That's got to count for something. A minor premiership, 3 rounds to go, and you had key injuries to all your spine. I just think Hughes' year has been incredible.
And do you reckon Jerome Hughes really does he get forgotten about a little bit because he doesn't play Origin?
Absolutely.
Right, he's a Kiwi player, and he's down in Melbourne.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? He's sort of out of sight, out of mind type of thing. But if those who have watched the Storm games, like he has been incredible.
Yep. Brisbane Broncos reportedly set to target RCG. The Courier Mail is reporting Gillard is on the radar for the Broncos. That launched a wide-ranging review on Monday in the wake of Brisbane's dramatic freefall to miss the finals this season. The para prop moved to the Dragon was regarded as pretty much done, but in a stunning twist Monday night, it broke that Campbell Gillard transfer to Red Sea wasn't necessarily done deal. The 31-year-old is seeking a 3-year deal from a prospective club, but Dragons were only willing to come to the party for 2 years. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Smithy, on RCG and where you reckon he'll end up.
Well, he's already said that he's out from Paris, so I don't know. Maybe it is the Bronx, because I reckon they were probably missing one middle forward, big aggressive middle forward, which they lost through Thomas Flegler, of course, going to the Dolphins, and so I think he can sort of fill the void there for them, just to help with that combination of Haas and Carrigan. I think he can shoulder a bit of the load there. Although the other boys, particularly Corey Jensen, I think stood up this year, playing in the middle. But there's talk around Christian Welsh as well, the Bronx, possibly grabbing him. But they're two very different players, right?
Yeah.
So it depends what the Bronx are chasing. Are they chasing someone that can come up and can be fairly dynamic through the middle of the field, runs the ball hard, comes off the back fence, pretty aggressive, a guy that can be sort of intimidating at times, I suppose, you're probably going to lead towards RCG. But if you're looking for someone to add a little bit of leadership, a bit of big game experience, you're probably going to lean towards Christian Welch. I reckon. They're two very different guys as far as like the style of footy that they play. Christian Welch will do all the really little things well for you, as far as like your kick pressure, your inside pressure, filling the space, all this type of stuff. He's got a pretty good offload on him as well. He carries the ball a lot differently to RCG though. So it all depends on what the Broncos are looking for, but there's plenty of noise around one of those guys that are going to end up at the Broncos.
Yeah, I think from a Broncos perspective, I don't think giving RCG a 3-year deal is a good idea. Not to suggest that he can't make that 3 years, but just at the age he is in the middle of the forwards, because he's just come off Player of the Year at the Eels. Like, he was bloody good this year. It's not like RCG isn't a high-quality front rower. And RCG, he's taken it to some of the best forward packs alone this year. He's been outstanding. It's just a 3-year deal that I would probably balk at if I was the Broncos. Just in the middle there, like... That's as you know, Smithy, it is a absolute tough gig, especially later on in your career. I think he is 30 plus at this stage. He might be even 31, 32.
Yeah, he's 31.
And so I'd be looking at a 2-year deal. Hopefully in that first year you're going to get a little bit chipped in from the Eels. Yep. I'd probably lean a little bit towards RCG over Welsh, even though the leadership that Welsh would bring would be really good. Mm-hmm. In saying that, if you could get Welsh for much cheaper than RCG, maybe that's exactly what this young forward pack needs at the Broncos, is a guy that can bring the Melbourne Storm standards to the club. So if you get Welsh for cheaper, then obviously you go Welsh. If they're gonna be around the same price, I think you probably go RCG and hope that. Put it this way: if I was a Broncos, it just depends on what your other recruitment's going to be. I think that they need a veteran wide running forward. For now, and I think that if you could get a veteran wide running forward, that would pick up a bit of the slack of the leadership void at the moment at the club. Yep. But if you can't get one of those, then I think you probably lean a little bit towards Welsh, because the talent isn't what the Broncos lack. Explosiveness, all that. A Jensen, Carrigan, Haas rotation with a guy like Willison that's getting a year older, you've got that in spades. What you don't have is leadership and a veteran that can bring standards to the club. So,
yeah, well, I think if either one of those end up at the Broncos, I don't think they get a 3-year deal.
No, I don't think so.
I'm with you on that, because, RCG's 31, Christian Welsh is 30, I believe. So, I think the Broncos they'll be fairly reluctant to throw a 3-year deal at either one of those players.
Yeah.
I think it'll be 2, and I think that they'll want them just to bolster their squad a little bit and add a bit more experience to a footy side that really it struggled with leadership at times this year.
Horsburgh recommits to the Raiders. What are your thoughts? I mean, he looked like they could write a book on Horsburgh's relationship with Ricky Stewart.
Well, it looked like he was gone.
He was gone. Absolutely,
he was gone for all money. But now they've sat down. They've had a little cup of tea together. And they've worked it out and said, no, we're all good.
Yeah.
Let's go. I'm staying on board.
Gets a match winner and all of a sudden he wants to stay. Hey?
Can we talk about the match winner?
Oh, stop it.
What was that? Like, he's claimed it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's gone. It's in the newspaper as a try and the way it all unfolded. But what was that? He just threw it on the boot.
Imagine what Ricky would have said to him if that didn't come off.
Hey, I can imagine what he did say when it did unfold.
Oh, mate.
When he threw it down on the boot, he would have gone, no, yes.
Oh, far out. Big red, hey? Big red.
Big red. What a man. No, but you know what? I've worked alongside him with the Queensland side.
Okay,
when he was involved there last series. And he was... I was really impressed, Kempy, with Corey Horsburgh. Really was. He's a massive footy head.
Oh, okay.
Massive footy head. And that's something that you don't really sort of assimilate with ruck forwards. You know what I mean? They just your typical ruck forward, like just, mate, big boys, hard and tough. They just get in and just get their job done. And, mate, I don't want to watch footy. I don't want to know the ins and outs of it. Just give me the ball and I'll run hard.
Yeah.
And when someone runs at me, I'll smash them.
Yep.
But he loves it. He loves talking about it. He loves talking about game plans and, different tactics. And, did you see this? And did you see that bloke do that on, last week? And he's all over it.
Yeah. I'm actually a little bit disappointed that he didn't come on the open market because I wouldn't have, for the right price, I would have liked him at the Broncos.
You reckon they would have had a crack at him?
I think they'd be silly not to. We need a bit of mongrel in our forward pack, in my opinion. I think we need a bit of a dog that's willing to get in dirty and muck it. You're just basically a forward that can play anywhere from 13 front row to edge.
Yep.
Because this year we just really lacked, especially on the edge, like Piacora is his rookie year. He had a few injuries, and plus he probably didn't progress as quickly as I think the club would have hoped. We lost Catewell. Then you've got Ricky, who started the year okay, but faded off towards the end. A guy like Horsburgh, just in that pack there. Then you can do things like you can potentially put Paddy in front row and have Haas partner him, and you can have Corey Horsburgh at 13 and potentially bring on guys like Jensen off the bench, and you can really bolster your... I just think he's a really valuable bloke to have in a forward pack because he can play so many positions.
Yeah. And it would have made it harder too because I think the Raiders, like with any sort of transfer to any other club, I think the Raiders, they come out and said, like, look, if we release him or if you want him, you got to take up his entire package.
His whole contract.
That he's on now.
Yeah. My three favourite... This is a text from Andy. My three favourite
Andy's
rugby league moments.
For sure.
Meninga try in Ashes of Ricky and Cam getting sent 10 in the bin at Shark Park and the 2016 Grand Final.
Yes, well done, Andy.
There you go, Andy.
Yes, well done.
There
Congrats.
you go, mate.
Can you text in after this week's game? We'll get to that soon. Sharks first on.
Oh, yeah. See, that rivalry is still there. It's still there. Oh, that's good. As a massive Sharks fan, I should say that 2016 was my favourite footy experience, but what was slightly more enjoyable was being at Shark Park the night Cam got sent for 10. That was the greatest moment in rugby league history. Matt.
Really? Really? You rated that highly.
Oh,
I'm glad. Good. I'm glad I'm part of your highlight in rugby league. I'm happy. I'm happy to be a part of that.
Hey, fellas, question for Cam. As a tragic Panthers fan, I noticed after the 2020 Grand Final, you gave Nath a bit of an embrace with a few words. Can you remember what you said, Jay?
No, I do remember that. No, I think he was with his old man, actually. He was with Ivan. And, pretty upset about the result and what happened. But I went down there and just said, look, congratulations on a wonderful season. They finished minor premiers. They won, and it was like 17 in a row leading into that game.
Yeah.
So, pretty remarkable to be able to do that. And I just went down there and said, look, I know exactly the way you're feeling right now. It hurts, mate. It hurts. But, this feeling, use it going into next year and help it make you be better. And, geez, they've done that, haven't they?
Oh, wow. Maybe you shouldn't have said that, Smithy.
Maybe I should have.
Maybe you should have said, mate, you'll easy win next year. Don't even bother about rocking up to pre-season.
No. Look, I meant that because he was only a young fella and hadn't experienced a loss before, and the first time they don't ever get easier.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to play in multiple grand finals and you lose more than one, they don't get easier. Trust me. But that first initial one is you just think, like, we've just blown the greatest opportunity to win, a premiership. Will I ever get another chance?
Yeah. And so many what ifs would come through your head, like, what if I had made that? Like, because once your fatigue wears off, you forget how fatigued you were in the moment.
Yep.
And you start saying to yourself, well, I actually could have made that effort, or whatever the situation was. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of Broncos players this year sitting there saying, what if? Like, what if I had done this? Or all that kind of stuff. Panthers v. the Roosters, 7:50, Panthers Stadium. You can listen to this live on SEN. As always, the best callers in the game on SEN, so make sure to tune in. Panthers team news. Final game to be played at Penrith Park. Cleary returns after 3 games out with a shoulder injury in the only change. Roosters team news. Young, Tupou, Collins and Butcher all return after missing the final game of the regular season. May and White return to the bench. How do you see this one, Smithy?
Oh, what a cracking game to open the final series. Team 2 v Team 3. Big one in Cleary, of course. I think that's the one that everyone's got their eye on is, because there's been a little bit of criticism for Penrith, Kempy.
Yeah.
Over the last few weeks, saying, well, no, they're not the team they've been, or they've seemed like they're slightly off, and like I agree, like they've changed a bit and they've lost personnel. There's no doubt about that, but there's no way I'm in a position to say they're gone or they can't win it this year. There's no way I'm going to do that, given the personnel they still have. And I'll tell you what, Cleary back. And if it all starts to click for them again over the next couple of weeks, well, look out. Whoever it is that they're facing. Would have loved to have seen a fully fit Roosters side available this week. Of course, Walker out, Brandon Smith out as well, and Victor Radley. But... geez, looking through their lineup right now, goodness me, like it is such a good lineup. When you just go through it, like Tedesco, Tupou, Suoli'i, Manu, Young, Kiri, and you throw Sandon Smith in there, what a backline.
Yeah.
Incredible backline.
Yep.
And then then you go down to the forwards and go, well, that's a representative forward pack.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The entire pack have played representative football.
Yep.
And, a couple of guys in there are in supreme form. Connor Watson burst. He come back from injury and just really exploded into that New South Wales Blues side. Angus Crichton has had one of the best seasons of his career. Lindsay Collins is playing great football as well. Spencer Leniu. It's just... I'll tell you what, it makes for a great game. I am leaning towards Penrith, though, given they're playing at home. Last game at Penrith Park before it's knocked down and refurbed, and their main man's back.
Oh, mate,
to steer the ship around. So,
yep.
I can't wait for this one. I'm doing this one for Channel 9, so I'm going to be there calling it. I can't wait for it. It's going to be a cracking opener. I'm just leaning towards Penrith, though, Kempy.
Oh, mate. I agree with you in regards to the Roosters. I understand it's not your starting side that you would have and you've got key players out, but by God, this side on paper, Spencer Leniu versus Leota, Connor Watson versus Kenny, Collins versus Fisher-Harris, Crichton versus Sorensen, Martin versus Satili Tupinoa, and Butcher versus Yo. That's a pretty even match. That's as pretty even. And then you go to the back line. You've got Tedesco versus Edwards, even as anything. You've got Tupou versus Taruva. Tupou probably gets the nod there. You've got Suoli'i versus Tungo. Suoli'i probably gets the nod there in regards to form-wise.
Yep.
Then you've got Manu versus Alamotti. Manu gets the nod there. You've got Young versus To'o. To'o gets a young nod there. Luai versus Kiri. Luai would get the nod for sure. But we have to remember, Kiri has also won 3 premierships himself. He is no slouch.
Yeah, Clive Churchill medalist.
Yep, Clive Churchill. And then obviously you've got Cleary versus Smith, and Cleary is out and out the better player there. But to suggest that, on paper, there is a world between these two sides, I just don't agree with it. I really don't agree with it.
No, I don't. And it's, looking at the way the Roosters have played this year, particularly with Walker, right? So he's the big one. So he's been able to produce some individual brilliance for this footy side and create things from nothing, from nowhere. Those little dinky kicks that he comes up with, a couple of, sort of long, loopy cutout passes that you really, when you see him throw them, you're just like, oh, what's he doing? But all of a sudden, it gets the ball quickly out to, say, Manu or Suoli'i, and away they go. They make some good meters, or they make a line break, whatever it is. And they're able to find points. That's their danger, right? They can score some big points on you if you're not ready. But I can't look past the fact that this Penrith side, they are a side that love grinding through 80 minutes. And this is what this time of the year is all about. You can't build a game around, well, let's just go and blow the opposition off the park. Because I think when you have that mindset and it doesn't come off, well, all of a sudden you're sitting there going, okay, geez, what's our plan B? What do we do now?
Yeah.
We haven't been able to score. We're 30 minutes into the game. We haven't scored a point. You know, the opposition have. It's 6-0 to them. Our plan was to come and blow them off the park, and we haven't. Now what?
I think as well with the Panthers, yes, to me they do look a bit beaten down, injured, carrying niggles everywhere. I think if you went into that locker room right now, I think you'd find a lot of blokes hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
However, I do think that the injection of Cleary it's at least going to get 2 80-minute performances out of them. Do they have the physical ability to go 3 games on the trot with how tired they look? That's where I start to question their fatigue. Like, could they get to a prelim and get beaten by a fresher side because they have been up for so long? That's where I go. That's where I think the fatigue might set in. However, I don't think it's going to set in the first week of the finals. And also, you know, you would know this better than anyone, Smithy. And like, granted, this is what made the Storm so great. But a lot of people are pointing to the Titans' performance and going, look, they just scraped by the Titans. I tell you what, after winning 3 premierships and being at the top of the table for 4 years in a row, getting up for a Titans game at the end of the season when there's nothing on the line, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
Like, I know in a fairyland we like to say, oh, they should be up for every game. Like, every game matters.
Yep.
Like, human nature kicks in at some point, surely. Storm v. the Sharks, Saturday, 4:05, Amy Park. Pappenhausen and Welsh return after missing last week's game. Fa'alogo hamstring injury means he will likely miss at least the first 2 weeks of the finals. Sharkies team news, Korfusi returns from being rested against Manly, moving Royce Hunt to the bench. Hazelton is likely to miss out after picking up a knee injury. That's a huge out. He was so important against Manly. How do you see this one, Smithy?
Well, I've got my boys winning Melbourne. They've been going really, quite strong over the last few weeks in particular with all their players back. Christian Welsh comes back into the side after being rested against the Broncos. Pappenhausen as well. A couple of big ins there, right? So hopefully Pappy's 100% ready to go. Fa'alogo, he picked up that hammy injury, so he's out for a few weeks. So no sort of genuine number one if Paps was to go down. I'm thinking that'll be Wishy would go back to fullback maybe. Well, he threw Munster back there last week, didn't he?
Yes, for a period, yep.
And Wishart went into the halves. But, look, I'm going Storm, but I must say, I'm going to be completely honest, I am a little bit nervous. Just a little bit nervous. Given if you look at the last couple of games, right, so Craig opted to rest 11 players, go up to Townsville, and just got beat. I'm really impressed with the performance. Really impressed by the performance of a lot of young guys that went up there and got beat only just 38-30. But then we roll out against the Broncos. Most of the guys back playing apart from Welsh and Pappenhausen. And, look, it was a big win, right? Scoreline looks incredible. Scored some pretty fancy tries as well. But the Broncos were awful, mate. They were awful.
Yeah.
So the one thing that concerns me is that I just hope the players don't have in their mind thinking, oh, look, we'll just play like we did against the Broncos.
Yeah.
And we'll get a victory, because it's not going to happen, boys.
Yeah.
This is a completely different outfit that you're facing this week. Okay, they put 40 on Manly last week. They've got all their players back now. They're a side that haven't played for the majority of the season with their strongest lineup. They are now, and I think they'll be hungry. They'll be hungry for a few reasons, right? Nico, one, he'll want to silence a few critics of his own. Secondly, the talk around, Cronulla over the last couple of years not having the ability to win the big matches, which they haven't. That's a fact. But I think they'll want to prove to themselves and a lot of people that they can do it. And the fact that they've gone down there and beat Melbourne this year already, mate, I think they will take a lot of confidence going down there. That's what makes me a little bit nervous. I'm backing Melbourne to win it, but I must say I've got a few little nerves just floating around at the moment.
Well, I think your nerves are warranted, Smithy, because you have to remember the Sharkies last year and the year before, the whole drama was around they hadn't beaten any top 8 sides. And
Yes.
basically, they couldn't beat top 8 sides. And they'd almost had an easy draw into the end of the season. However, this year, 6 out of 9 games against top 8 sides, Sharkies have won, and it's flown under the radar. No one's spoken about it. Because I remember vividly earlier this year when they were going up against the top-tier sides, that was the yarn heading in, is like they need to be able to get one, like literally just one scalp. That's what we're talking about, one scalp. They've done it 6 out of 9 times with a 66.6 win percentage against top 8 sides, which is the second best out of the top 8.
You're right.
So you've got the Cowboys 7 out of 10, Manly and Sharkies at 6 out of 9. Then you've got the Panthers at 7 out of 11, and you've got the Storm of 6 out of 10. Then you've got the Bulldogs 4 out of 11, the Roosters 3 out of 10, and the Knights 1 out of 10. So it shows you this isn't the same Sharkies side that we looked at last year and the year before that. And this is their grand final. In my opinion, if I'm Fitzy, this is their grand final because once you get this monkey off your back, you're almost good to go, for the rest of his coaching kind of not career, but you know what I mean. The next few years, it's just gone. You don't have to worry about that pressure anymore. So it's almost like a grand final for him.
You just it's the monkey off the back, right? For a lot of the players, particularly Fitzy as coach and Nico as the halfback. And I think he's come out this week already and said, "Oh, look, there's criticism of any player that wears the number 7.
Yeah,
especially at this time of year." So if your team doesn't get a result, a lot of the criticism is aimed towards the halfback because he's the chief playmaker and in charge of the game plan and getting the team around the park and whatnot. So, there'll be a point to prove. Like for the Sharks, if there's any word of advice for them, don't make it personal.
Yeah.
Don't go into this game trying to prove other people wrong. Prove to yourself.
Yeah.
That's all they got to do.
Yeah.
Because the facts are there for us to see that they haven't performed well in finals over the last 2 years. They just haven't. What was it? 2022 where they finished second and they got bundled out straight sets?
Yeah, so
they
went incredible game against the Cowboys where they looked like they had in a bag, and then the Cowboys, I think it was Taumalolo runs a really good lead, I think, and they score.
Yep.
And then they lose to the Eels, I'm pretty sure. And then the Eels go up and lose. Yeah, anyway. Then the next year it was the Roosters game, and they looked like they had that in the bag with a lot of things going against the Roosters, some tough calls against the Sharkies.
Yep.
And, they lost that game.
Yeah, so, for them, don't try and prove anyone wrong, outside of your club, journos, whatever, fans from other clubs, whatever it is, the things that you're hearing. Go out there and prove to yourself, boys.
Yeah.
That you can compete at this time of year. That's all you got to do.
Yep.
And understand that you've got a good game plan and you've got a good footy side, and go and play pretty much like the way they did last week against Manly.
Absolutely. And also heading into this season, it is different to last year because you have beaten a bunch of top 8 sides. So if you're Fitzy, you're sitting there going, boys, we are a better side. Statistically, everything like that, we are a better side than we were last year. Therefore, we can go one better this year.
Yep.
And I think also, I know we want results now, but it is only natural for a new coach with a new squad to take time to build into final series. And I think the Sharks have built really, really nicely into this third year of Fitzgibbon's leadership. In Cowboys team news, Jordan McLean returns from a hamstring injury, moving Sam McIntyre back to the bench. Knights team news, the Knights are unchanged from their win over the Dolphins last weekend. What do you reckon, Smithy?
Oh, I like the Cows in this one. I really do. I just think they're specials, given the form that they're taking into this one. Slightly, they were unconvincing against Storm, right? But I reckon they come into that game thinking, "Oh, look, we got to win this." It's a very much an understrength side, so I reckon they were a little bit. Well, I wouldn't say underprepared. I just think they come in there with a little bit of a soft attitude. Whereas last week, that's got to be the best performance of their season, surely. Just watching them go about, unraveling the Dogs' defence with their footy was incredible. They had a great mix of their physical physical stuff through the middle. They had their razzle-dazzle out wide. And they backed it up with their defence as well, something that we haven't seen a lot of this year. So I just think being in Townsville, playing in front of a big crowd, it's just going to be a little bit too much for Newcastle. Although Knights coach Adam O'Brien's come out and said, well, I think our team's a little bit better prepared for this one, given we've played in some tight, tough matches, unlike the opposition who have played in some blowouts of late. Whether that means anything or we read into that too much, I just think across the park, I just think there's a little bit more strike in the Cowboys lineup.
Yeah, I think the worrying thing for Knights is if KP gets shut down, where do their points come from?
Well, that's right.
Exactly. You look at last week, and he basically was responsible for both of their tries. Purely KP made those tries happen.
Yeah. Out of nothing.
Yeah, literally nothing. Just, drifting across field, getting into dummy half, making line breaks. And so the concern for the Knights is if the Cowboys can come up with a game plan that just shuts him out or is just very, very aware when he's around the ruck, it's going to be really hard for them to score points because they don't necessarily have halves that can create space for their outside men to do something special. Yeah. Whereas you look at the Cowboy side, if you shut down Drinkwater, you've got to worry about Val Holmes, you've got to worry about Taulagi, you've got to worry about Dearden, Lukey, Nanai. Whereas that Newcastle side, the problem is that Bradman, Best, and Gagai, they are attacking weapons, but they don't have the halves to unlock them at this stage.
Yeah.
They
got to rely on Kalen, don't they?
Really
to give them some quality football out there.
Exactly, unless they have the game of their lives and they just this is the first game where a Cogger and a Phoenix Crossland can really open them up. But I just haven't seen that yet, unfortunately, for the Knights.
And then when you look at Cows, right? So they had the most representation in Origin this year, I believe.
Yes, 16.
So you've got guys there that have played. You've got guys that have played at that high level, and that they can step up and make that next, that next step into finals football and play at a higher level. Whereas across a lot of the Newcastle side, a handful of them played in last year's final series, and went fairly deep, but that was again off the back of just some out of the box performances by Kalen Ponga, right? So. We know, and this is no disrespect to the rest of that footy side, but it really comes down to how much influence will KP have.
Absolutely.
If the Cowboys give him latitude to go and do his thing, well, they'll be dangerous.
Yep.
They'll be dangerous. So there's no doubt, if there's one player on their tip sheet this week, the Cows, it's got to be Kalen Ponga. And Absolutely. They need to do, just whenever he gets the ball, it needs to be a straight line, and people moving at him and just smother him.
Yeah.
Smother him. Smother KP, take his opportunities out of the game, minimise his opportunities, I should say, and that will go a long way to winning this one.
Alrighty, Doggies versus the Seagulls. Addo-Carr stands himself down. Sherry, Burton, Skelton all return. Kiraz moves to wing after starting in the centres last week. Manly team news. Travojevic returns from a shoulder injury. Cooler back to the centres. Tommy Talau moves back to the wing. What do you reckon, Smithy?
$1.90 a piece, this mob. I'd say this is game 1 and game 4 are the closest ones for me.
Okay.
So Roosters, Penrith, and then now this one, and there's a bit of, I won't say people are bagging the Dogs, but it's not as positive as it was 6 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Given the last couple of results, but that's their own doing, and the coaches come out and said too, we are so far off where we were and what our expectations are. It's not funny. Particularly with their defence, they've been all over the shop the last couple of weeks. Defensively, soft.
And their errors,
haven't they?
Oh, mate, their errors as well. Coming out of trouble, that's half the battle. I think for the Doggies is just making errors in the wrong part of the field at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, to be fair, and sorry, I don't like singling a player out. Hutchinson had a really poor game last week.
Yeah.
You put Burton back in that side. They may still have lost, but it probably wouldn't have gotten away from him as much as it did, I think.
Yep.
But I personally think, mate, I think Manly, just too many players in key positions that have got big game experience.
Do you read much into last week's performance?
I do,
40 points they hadn't scored on them.
I do, unfortunately, because it's been 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I think they're running it. I think they've had such an incredible year. I think they're tired. I think it's been a massive year. You can only stay up for so long. They've proved everyone wrong. Unfortunately, I think the Manly Seagulls get the job done.
Well, yeah. Well, a couple of weeks ago, right? So they beat the Doggies. And that was one of the more explosive performances I've seen from them. They were physical, Olakau'atu. They couldn't tackle Olakau'atu. The two front rowers started well. That will be in their mind.
Yeah.
That will be their go-to is that power start. And if they can get on top early, they might be able to finish them off. I think everything being equal, I think Manly get past the Doggies just maybe 6 or 10 points.